About the only thing I remember from school is the 3-4-5 triangle. And that's probably because it's used so often to set up right angles in situations where you just can't use something like a framing square. Here I'm using a baseline to establish the lengths that I'm going to need to measure out this triangle. Since the longest side is 5 units long, I'm setting up my dividers and I'm pacing off 5 equal spaces along the baseline. Now I'm going to use the length of 3 of these divisions to figure out where the vertical line is going to be positioned. Because I don't know exactly where it's going to intersect with the hypotenuse, I'm scribing this measurement as an arc. Now I'm going to use the length of all 5 divisions to figure out where the long side of the triangle intersects with the vertical leg of the triangle. The hypotenuse, or the long side of the triangle, is going to start from the 4th division and it's going to intersect with the arc that we drew earlier. This will give us a right angle triangle that has one leg that is 3 units, one leg that is 4 units, and one leg that is 5 units. When all of these points intersect, you have a right angle triangle. Here I'm just using a random setting on a caliper, but if you wanted to establish a really big right angle triangle, you could use multiples of the 3, 4, 5. For example, if you were laying out a foundation or something, you could do 30 feet by 40 feet by 50 feet. When all those points line up, you have a perfect 90-degree corner at the base. Another example that comes up a lot is dividing a given length into a certain number of equal spaces. And again, this is another situation where dividers can be used to figure this all out without having any idea of what the actual measurement is. Here I'm establishing a vertical line that's going to represent the edge of the work that I'm laying out. I now need to use the dividers to lay out the number of divisions that I need to figure out. I usually prefer to do this somewhere else on the layout table or further down on the stock where it won't be in the way. Here I've roughly measured the baseline and I'm giving myself a little reference mark to work from. It doesn't really matter what you use for a caliper setting, but you want the total number of divisions to go beyond the length of the baseline that you're working with. So here I want to divide the line into 4 equal spaces, and you can see how the 4th division goes a little bit beyond the actual length of the baseline, so that's perfect. Now I'll measure the total length of the layout line and scribe it on the working drawing. I'm just putting 2 arcs to show where it intersects with the vertical line. And then I'll use a straight edge to draw in these 2 layout lines. And then I need to transfer the caliper settings to these lines. By connecting the corresponding caliper settings on the upper and lower lines, I'll be dividing the horizontal line into equal spaces. Dividers are by far the best way to lay out a complicated shape that doesn't really have any reference point like a right angle or something that you can work from. So the first thing you have to do is establish a reference line and create 2 points that you're going to measure from. Ideally, these 2 points should not be part of what you're working on, so that they are very obviously the points that you're measuring from. If you use something off of the part that you're working with, it can sometimes get confusing and it's easy to make a mistake. Keeping it as separate points makes it very obvious where you're working from. So to reproduce this example, I'm going to start off with the baseline, and then I'm going to take a measurement of the reference points and I'll put them on the baseline. Next, I'll use the dividers to establish where the bottom corners of the shape intersect the baseline. From this point, I'll be using 2 arcs to establish the location of each corner of this shape. The first arc is going to be drawn from the left-hand reference point to the first corner of the shape, and the second line is going to be drawn from the right-hand reference point to the first corner of the shape. When these 2 arcs intersect, that's the location of the corner. And then I'll just continue this process until I work my way around the shape. And then it's just a matter of using a straight edge to connect all the corners of the shape. You can also use this method to change the scale of a drawing. Say, for example, you need to build this thing 3 times the size of the actual drawing that you're working with. The overall procedure is exactly the same, only you need to establish a separate working line where you can pace off 3 of the units that you're measuring. So the total length of these 3 paces on this reference line is the dimensions of the new base for the larger shape that is 3 times the size of this drawing. And then I would continue this process for every reference point on this drawing. And finally, here's a couple of examples of how you can use dividers to make measurements on things that are just normally really awkward to measure. On this particular model of drill press, the depth stop is really awkward to use, so I'll use dividers to just measure up against a known distance to use as a depth stop. Here's an example. I have one leg of the dividers pressed up against the casting for the drill press, and then I'm just measuring down to the top edge of the drill chuck. This is really easy to do, and it's very, very accurate. Certainly much better than putting a piece of tape on the drill. Here I'm using a set of dividers to establish where the blade is going to fall on my horizontal bandsaw. I have 2 saw cuts on the front jaw of my vise. They're used to set up the dividers. This divider setting gives me the exact location of the blade in relation to the right-hand saw cut on the vise jaw. So I can set the whole thing up without having to tilt the head down constantly to check to see if the saw cut is lining up with my layout mark. Hi, I'm Dennis, and thanks for watching. If you like this video, by all means give it a thumbs up. If you want to support this channel, you have a couple of options to do that. The first thing, of course, is to just subscribe. Second, if you have ideas or photographs of things you'd like to see on this channel, send them along. I'll turn them into a video. If you want to lend your financial support to this channel, you have a couple of options there. You can go to my channel homepage and click on the options that you see in the banner. So thank you for your support, and with your help, I'll be doing this for some time to come. We'll see you next time.